So you and I share a personality trait of being disagreeable, or in the technical sense, for the Big Five aspect scale, being low in agreeableness. Now, just to make it clear to people who are listening, I've put together a brief description of what it means to be low in trait agreeableness, if you'll bear with me. So, all right. People low in agreeableness are not so nice, stubborn, dominant, harsh, skeptical, competitive, and in the extreme, even predatory. However, they tend to be straightforward, even blunt, so you know where they stand. Their extraordinarily high levels of skepticism play a protective role, although it often interferes with their ability to cooperate with or trust others whose intentions are genuinely good. They let you know exactly what they think, when they think it, whether you want to know it or not. In addition, because of their tendency to engage in conflict at a moment's notice, people exceptionally low in agreeableness do not sacrifice medium to long-term stability and functionality for the sake of short-term peace. The price paid for this, people close to those exceptionally low in agreeableness will frequently experience them as overbearing and uncaring. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're all of those things, but I am most of those things. And I think even though we share this trait to differing degrees, the point of difference is that I really struggled with it, but you seem to manage it far more productively than I do. So I'll get to the question. There's two of them. First, how do you manage this in the military, an organization that genuinely prefers conformity and compliance, and how do you manage it among civilians?
What an outstanding question. That's actually an exceptional question. Okay, let's talk about disagreeableness and how I continue to apparently get employed, which is genuinely surprising to me. And not just employed, apparently promoted, etc.
Yeah.
So the description of disagreeableness is apt for me, is appropriate. I've got no doubt it is for you too. I'm many of those things. I'm not by nature a hyper-friendly person. I don't have a large circle of close friends, etc., etc. I'm probably much like many of us in this boat. We are who we are. We do what we do. We just fucking get on with it. The thing that I've found over time is I'm not naturally averse to human contact and social interactions, etc. It's just that I don't demand it. I don't need it for me to function and do my job, role, work. So one of the things that I guess has mitigated that personality trait is Army taught me how to instruct and assess. So, as you know, you've got to be in front of people. You've got to talk to them. You've got to listen to what they say. You've got to make a judgment on performance and give them feedback that doesn't destroy their sad, tiny, pathetic lives, so to speak, if they don't meet the standard. Now, that sounds a bit harsh, but if you are disagreeable in your approach, you expect standards to be met all the time. And if they're not met, the question is, how do you get person A to standard B without destroying them? So that takes some level of, effort or control to understand what's driving them, why they're, just as we described around the 5 why and with exercise hierarchy. You can't achieve that. Why not? Blah, 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 and off we go. In many instances, in fact, most instances, human performance and human behaviour is simply a facet that they don't know any different. Like they don't know why they're doing things. Therefore, if you want them to change, you need to show them, explain, and do it. if you balance that against a disagreeable personality who simply expects that level of performance, if you hold on to the disagreeableness, what you will find is you will burn up. You will get to the point where you can't get your message across because you're too focused on their lack of performance rather than your lack of ability to change their performance. So by learning to engage through instructional and assessment skills, I get to mitigate their lack of performance, i.e. I get the shits when they're not performing at the required level, with I can fix that and hopefully they'll get to the point that I want them, expect them, etc., and I'll no longer be disagreeable to them in the most instance.
But
So
can you
do
that? Can you go through that process? How do you go through that process without them hating you all the while?
I'm not sure that hate is an accurate description for people who are disagreeable.
I mean for that. So if you're conducting the training as a disagreeable person, how can you approach that process so that the person you're training doesn't resent you at the end of it, despite getting them to a higher level of performance?
Okay, so you have to interpose on top of that many other facets of skill. Firstly, you need to control your behaviour. You can't yell inappropriately. You have to behave as a professional if you're interacting as a human in society. We don't yell at people you're trying to teach. You don't beat them. The days of, dare I say it, beatings will continue until morale improves. Thank you. That shit's gone, mate, as you well know. You can incentivise, you can cajole, you can guide, coach, mentor, influence. All of the techniques have to come to the fore. So for me, I use the technique that, in essence, the longer game is at play. For me not to be pissed off with performance, I need to put the effort in up front. They will perform. I will be happy. So I've had to learn to subdue my normally rapid or instant reaction towards poor performance, lack of behaviour, the things that annoy us as disagreeable personalities. And it is a thing. Don't get me wrong. I still get angry.
Yeah.
I still get frustrated, but I've learned to control it and understand that the long game it plays, if I use all of the other skills that I have to get them to the point where I stop being disagreeable, they're performing at the required standard. Some of them are disagreeable, some of them are not. I don't really give a shit. But if they go through the process I think that works, they will stop pissing me off. Basically,
yeah,
that's how I view it. So, how can I explain this? Does that help?
Yeah. So I have one aspect to my approach. And I'd be interested to hear what you think. So one of the things I mentioned in the description is that they tend to be straightforward, even blunt, so you know where they stand. And I think, at least from what I can tell, the strength that I wasn't aware of initially in being disagreeable is sincerity. Because you tend to be honest with people most of the time, even if it's uncomfortable, when you tell them why you're doing it, why you want to help them, people tend to believe you. And they tend to appreciate that sincerity, even if it's uncomfortable.
I agree. So in my experience, and I can be, to be blunt, I can be a flaming chainsaw. I've ripped through shit like people wouldn't believe. Adults, humans, fucking you name it. I've learned to understand that firstly, I'll take a step back so people understand where I'm coming from. I took a personal motto many, many years ago to be right. So if I do things, I want to be right. And it's not just like what I'm told, etc. I want to be accurate, factual, correct, professional. So what I do is the example. So over time, you develop those facets of behaviour where, me personally, I'm right. When people find me spelling wrong, saying things wrong, fucking things up, it's a point of pride to point it out to me, which is okay. But it means if I get pushed on a handful of points, it means everything else is right, correct. So if my behaviour is as best as I can make it the example, when I then go to impart my example, as you would know, I'm the DS solution. And for those listening who are not familiar, yeah. I'm the directing staff. So I'm the benchmark upon which your performance is measured. So my actions, my behaviour, my language, my performance is, as best as I can make it, the exemplar. So if they see my performance and know that I'm not there to compromise or corrupt them, so if someone who presents, who knows what they're doing, who doesn't compromise their personal integrity and says, this is what I want you to do, this is why I want you to do it, I'm going to show you how to do it and I'll step you through the process. They get on board really quick. So if you showed someone, firstly, if you picked up and I'll take a step back to some of your listeners' experience, a deadlift. If you picked up a 60-kilo deadlift perfectly for 10 reps, but at the same time you talked them through it, you could do it comfortably, you could breathe, you could show them correct posture and position and said, this is the example, this is what I want you to do. And they couldn't do it yet. But by the same token, you reserved your frustration. They couldn't. They had poor habits. They had poor behaviours, but you showed the best practice example. They trust you and they listen. So my first tick is done. They're listening. All right, great. So then I step them through the process. I show them. I demonstrate. I explain. I correct their behaviour or their performance until they achieve the required standard. And at some point, they themselves know that they've achieved the standard by someone, such as myself, who is the standard. So if they know that they're measuring themselves against the performance, the DS solution, so to speak, even if it's partially off, I don't need to be disagreeable.
So it sounds like integrity is a big part of not necessarily. I mean, you're not really removing the trait. All you're doing is saying, part of the trait is I like standards. They're there for a reason, but being fair in the application of it, that the standard applies to me just as much as it applies to you. So even though, someone may be subordinate over someone else, if the goal is to be right, then there's nothing wrong with a subordinate telling their superior, you've done this wrong, and I'm telling you because I know it's important to you to be right. So you have to be willing to take that criticism if you're that sort of person.
Yes, sir. That's exactly, you are on the money. So when you rethink that description of disagreeableness, remember, disagreeable means that on a binary scale, there's agreeableness.
Correct.
So if you're disagreeable, there's an agreeable. But in the middle, there's a standard. There's a center point. So if I become disagreeable, it's because your actions, behaviours, or whatever that I've observed or interacted with are not where I would want you to be. My preference is the centre, the standard. And it's, which is ironic, seeing as I'm a subversive motherfucker. but the point is, someone with disagreeable nature knows what to expect. They want a certain performance of behaviour, and if you deviate, they get the shits. So they want you to come back to the standard. So an agreeable nature might be the opposite. I don't know. I can't extrapolate fully the opposite because that's not me. I naturally push against questions, positions, oppositions constantly to get them to a point sometimes that I don't know. But I know that I don't like it and I would prefer it to be different. It's not, but the other side of this, by the way, is I don't do this to hurt. Like at no point is my disagreeableness designed to physically or mentally hurt people.
So how do you pick your battles in that sense, though? Because it's not. I mean, it's. I mean, I lost a deployment just from being disagreeable, and it really came down to not being able to recognise that potentially counterproductive aspect of my personality was about to rear its head and rein it in before I opened my mouth and, stepped on my dick effectively. Is it just you just got to eat it until you figure it out over time? You just got to learn through hard lessons?
To be honest, there's no right or wrong. For me, it was age and experience. And I've got to say, even now, I'm about to turn 49, I still get it wrong. Some days I fuck it up, okay? Some days I overstep my boundaries. The difference is at my position, people don't necessarily lose their shit at me. They just look and ask, and I go, yeah, my bad. That was too far, so to speak. Being disagreeable as a personality trait is one thing, but at some point you realise you can't get through life like that. It doesn't work. You can be disagreeable all the fuck you like, but eventually everyone disagrees with you, which means if you want things or to do things or to buy things, it doesn't work. It's not effective. It's not efficient. So if you're a smart personality, when you ask the question about picking your battles, you go, all right, what am I going to die in a ditch over? What are the things that I won't compromise on? So for me, I have some certain, I guess, barriers or things that I will not compromise on. That's the shit that I'll die in a ditch over. That are the things that people are going to hear, so, shall I say, strident words.
Yeah.
Or written or verbal, I don't care. I will push back significantly on issues of my concern. But in many instances, learning to understand that in many times, shit, you won't win. People are people, they'll do their things. But if the disagreeableness for me has come into play or does come into play where it compromises your personal integrity and your personal values.
Got it.
So that I guess in summary, the shit that made sense to me is when people pushed against me personally, the shit that I would define Dan Minton. That's when I push back, and then you have a schism or a break. You got to accept that, or just go fuck it. Thanks, mate. I'm out, and move on.